A very good evening, dear friends. Now I'll continue with the other paragraphs of A Prayer for My Daughters. Already we have critically reviewed the first four paragraphs of the poem A Prayer for My Daughter by W.B. Yeats. Now I'll begin with the fifth one. In courtesy, I have her chiefly learned, hearts are not had as a gift, but hearts are earned by those that are not entirely beautiful, yet many that have played the fool for beauty's very self. That is, people must understand that beauty in physicality is not the beauty in the right choice. And this is something which the beautiful ladies also have to understand, that it is the both way phenomena. That is, a girl who or a lady who is beautiful must understand that beauty alone is of no use. Beauty must be balanced well, or balanced in a right proportion therewith courtesy. And similar is the aspect with somebody who is attracted by the beauty itself. He must understand that the beauty of the opposite sex or beauty of the lady in love is not the physical beauty only. That is, the poet says, has charm made wise, and many a poor man that has roved, love and thought himself beloved. From a glad kindness cannot take his eyes. That is, people who were befooled by the very aspect of a person's physical beauty have learnt a lesson now, that physical beauty is ephemeral, it is short lived, it may not go on in for the whole life. But the right nature, the courteous nature, the kind, humble nature, full of gratitude, full of thankfulness, and full of good mannerism, may have longevity and permanence. So, that kind of expectation is from the poet for his daughter as well as for all the beautiful ladies. And there is a lesson for those who are attracted by the physicality of a lady, that they must get into the real persona of a lady by checking the humble attitude mixed with good looks, and not only affixed with good looks all alone. In the next paragraph, he says, may she become a flourishing hidden tree, that all her thoughts may like the linnet be, and have no business but dispensing round their magnanimities of sound. Nor but in merriment begin a chase, nor but in merriment a quarrel. Oh, may she live like some green laurel, rooted in one dear perpetual place. Now, the poet says that he expects his daughter to be a fixed and rooted like a green hidden tree, hidden from the public gaze, hidden from the public life. He does not want his daughter to be the butt of everybody's attention. He wants his daughter to be doing good things, doing good tasks away from the public gaze. She must behave like a little small linnet, little small bird there in a big tree, who is dispensing and spreading the beautiful aura of melodious music all around, and is moving there in the scope of the canopy of this big tree, and has all sort of enjoyments, and that kind of life must be there. That is the life which is not meant for the attraction of others, but for personal satisfaction, for personal grace. And he says that whenever there is a point of quarrel, whenever there is a point of conflict, whenever there is a point of indifference, that also must be there with a kind hearted, humble, and mannered tone. That is, there is no point in fighting unnecessarily with a tempered tone. That aspect must not be there in his daughter. So, the contradictory things he says, must be free like the linnet and must be rooted like a tree. So, both the things. She must have a freedom of expression, but that expression for the personal satisfaction, for a personal grace, for a personal understanding, for a person imbibing attitude, and rooted like a tree, that is firm to the values, firm to the upbringing, groomed by or injected by the parents. In the next paragraph, he says, my mind, because the minds that have loved, the sort of beauty that I have approved, prosper but little, has dried up of late, yet knows that to be chalked with hate may well be of all evil chances chief. If there is no hatred in a mind, assault and battery of the wind can never tear the linnet from the leaf. Now he extends his expression by saying that if his daughter may incorporate or may be affected there with the vice of hatred, then she may shed off like leaves shed off from the trees. But if she is fixed there with a pure attitude of not having any sort of hatred, jealousy, or any sort of hate for any particular person, so any sort of evil outlook for anybody, so that personality has got a longevity, a long survival, so that personality may not be assaulted by the tormenting routine of the wind, and no wind can tear away the leaf from the linnet. That is, his daughter may turn out to be the little linnet there in a big tree, and no wind can take her away, no wind can affect her. So she may be deep rooted, fixed, and firm, pure hearted. A person who is true to his or her own self, a person who is quite honest, that person is fearless. A person who has got no vice and only virtues to express, that person is just the face of the God. So he expects his daughter to be just like that pure human being. In the next paragraph, he says, an intellectual hatred is the worst, and that is something which we have to learn now also in the present scenario. That's the intellectual hatred. That we are so calculative and political there in our interest that we tend to inject all sort of cause and effect relationship while we are progressing there at our workplace or there in our life itself. So we are so much calculative. That intellectual hatred he talks about, he says that intellectual hatred of generally looking at the things with a proportionist mind, that is of the mind of a person who is looking for all sort of gains or advantages of any relationship, that aspect must not be there in his daughter's personality. So let her think opinions are a curse. Have I not seen loveliest woman born out of the mouth of plenty's horn? Because of her opinionated mind, barter that horn, and very good, by quiet natures understood for an old bellows full of angry wind. Now, here he connects the confessional attitude with the autobiographical sketching of his own life, where he puts up the things related to his long-time beloved Maud Gonne, whom the poet loved very much, but unfortunately he could not marry Maud Gonne, who left him and married someone else. Why? Because she was opinionated, she had her own opinions, she balanced the things, she looked for the materialistic gains, she looked for the advantages of life, the wonders and the comforts of the life, and she found that she couldn't have that kind of comfortable routine while living happily in a married bond there with the poet. So she left him and married someone else. So, taking the example of Maud Gonne and the experience he has gained out of the relationship with his once known beloved Maud Gonne, he expresses expresses the same values, therefore his own daughter, that she must not be having all sort of different and stern opinions which make her quite opportunist and quite taken away by the materialistic and the value gained life. She must always give more prominence, more importance to whatever are the virtues of life than her own personal gains. Because if one is pure and good natured, everything will go on well. In the last line, he says, by quiet nature's understand for an old bellows full of angry wheat. Sometimes it may happen that you may just barter yourself, therefore good things with bad things, that sometimes you lose good things while getting attracted for otherwise appearing to be good things but later on resulting bad things, evil things. So whatever appears at the very face of the face of something may not turn out to be good and progressive. It may turn out to be very wrong in the latter part of the life. So one must understand that what appears may not be good and what is expected not to be good may turn out to be very good. So those calculations should be made there in the puritist sense, not by the way of the materialistic sense. So that is the analysis of the next four paragraphs. So I am left there with two paragraphs which I'll take up there in the next video clip. So goodbye for now.